5 biggest red flags in a toxic relationship. And this is coming from someone that's highly narcissistic or really abusive, okay? And these are one of the biggest red flags that come into mind for me. And there's a lot more, by the way, but these are, to me, are one of the ones that I dealt with and the ones that are the biggest to me. Number 1, hypersensitivity. Do they become passive aggressive when you start calling them out on certain things, even if it's constructive criticism and you're genuinely bringing up concerns in the relationship and you're calling them out for like maybe something that they did, something that they said, so certain behaviors, and they become very hypersensitive when it's like you brought it up in the best way possible. You were calm, you were collective, and you did your best to present it that way, and they're still passive aggressive and very defensive. Well, that's because they are very hypersensitive people, especially if they're really, abusive or highly narcissistic. Especially with the narcissist, narcissism is a defense mechanism. So that's why they're very hypersensitive, because abusers are very shameful people because they know what they're doing. Don't think that they don't know what they're doing. That's why they're always trying to protect themselves at all costs. So they become hypervigilant and hypersensitive. So that's number 1. Number 2, circular arguments. What happens a lot of times is like the same thing. When you bring something, you want to communicate about something in a healthy way, a concern, something that bothers you deep down, and you're trying to find common ground with this person. You're not. These conversations turn circular very easily. And what happens is that it's because they're not taking accountability. And from there, they start engaging in something called word salad. What word salad is basically taking a bunch of things that don't make sense, introducing it to the argument, and by the time you think the argument's going to be over, you're talking about 10 other different things, not the original topic that you brought up, but 10 other different things. And then from there, they can blame shift. From there, they could be like, when you did this in the past, this bothered me. And it's always bringing up the past. It's always bringing about things that was non-relatable to the original topic. So that's the word salad. And there's no accountability. Like I said, there's a lot of blame shifting, and they become very argumentative. And from there, it's like there's just no communication. There's a lack of communication. And you got to ask yourself, are you really being heard? Because most of the time in these circular arguments, you're not. Everything just goes in a circle, and then they build themselves up, and then they could either snap, or you start snapping from reactive abuse. Reactive abuse meaning that they made you so frustrated that you lash out. But when you do that, especially with someone who's really abusive, they'll twist that on you when you react, because they can say, well, you see how you made me feel? You always do this to me. Whatever they say, it's like, oh, you always engage in this behavior and you're talking about me. So now you're over apologizing. Now you're like, I didn't mean it this way. I'm so sorry. But look, it's just, I was really concerned. And then it's like, no, you don't understand. I'm telling you how I feel. So remember, it's reverting back to you, how they feel. Now they can easily say that you're the troublemaker, and this is why they behave this way. And then by the end of the day, there's no resolution. It's like usually the victim, what they would do at that point, will just drop the whole thing altogether just to create peace. And you see, over time, that's really damaging to the victim, because now they're losing their voice. And now the abuser has the upper hand, because now they can see that they can get away with certain things, so they emphasize on that bad behavior. So a lot of circular arguments are going to happen in these toxic relationships. There's going to be no resolution, okay? So that's a big one right there. Number 3, vindictiveness. They will punish you for even the smallest things. Let's say that you forgot to call them one night, you were extremely exhausted, you just closed your eyes, you fell asleep. Next thing you know, they don't call you for one day or maybe 2 days, and then you ask them, where were you? Like what happened? I was waiting for your text. I was waiting for your call. And they'll be saying stuff like, well, oh, you don't know? And you'd be like, what? They're like, yeah, you forgot to call me, and now I'm doing the same thing. And they'll literally tell you stuff like that. I'm not joking. I experienced that. And so another thing that they would do is that they'll block you. Like, don't get me wrong, they'll block you and unblock you, with your phone number on social media, and doing little petty things when you get them upset. And you start catching their manipulation because they're very vindictive. And then you'll start catching a bit of the gaslighting, and that becomes worse over time, by the way. But they start engaging in this vindictive behavior. It's like an eye for an eye for them. And they don't know no other way to function, They think everyone behaves like this. And so you'll start catching a lot of the manipulation and everything, the punishments, the silent treatments, all that stuff. All that stuff in between. So number 4, do you feel constantly drained by this person's negativity? And a lot of times with toxic people and narcissists, you feel drained around them constantly because they're very negative, emotion-based people. And so they're using you as an outlet. And if you try to switch the conversation around and make it more jolly and happy and stuff like that, they'll try to revert it back to what they were talking about originally. And if you bring it up at one point, trust me, because I've done this, where like, hey, you can tell me how you feel, but let's go back to laughing and stuff like that too, so that way it'll make you feel better too. And next thing you know, they'll start throwing their narcissistic rage, and they'll be telling you, well, I thought I can trust you, I thought I can go to you. Now I have to be careful. Now I have to do this. And it's like they're draining you again. And now they're making you conform. It's like now you're being scared to kind of like, bring certain things up that are of like great concern to you, and it's really a never-ending story with like the constant negativity. Sometimes you don't even pick up the phone, I know I didn't for a long time. Like there's times where if I didn't feel like picking up during her lunchtime, and because I was just drained, because people, I'll be honest, let's be real, most people need to gain their energy back in order to re-engage back out in the world and everything, in your intimate partner, your friends, your family. You need to recharge, you see. But when someone's highly toxic, they're really just draining you. They're not giving you that same energy back, so you feel depleted. And this is why sometimes it's okay to take breaks, in any kind of relationship, and then come back. But with a narcissist, it's like they see that as abandonment. Or anyone highly toxic, they see that as abandonment when you step away for a little bit. They don't understand the necessity of space because they're just thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about your space. They're just thinking about themselves and self-regulating. So this is why your bucket feels depleted and theirs gets full, And number 5, this is the biggest one for me. This is the hallmark of someone highly toxic and highly narcissistic. It's the lack of empathy. And a lot of the times, you have to really pay attention to a lot of things. Like throughout the relationship, were you really being heard? Were your needs really being met? Were things reciprocal? Were they, like, oh, I ask a question, you ask a question, tell me how was your day, I'll tell you how was my day. And more importantly, was it reciprocal? And another thing that you'll notice too, pay attention to how they have these relationships with their family and friends. Are they constantly talking bad about them? A lot of them do. And are their relationships superficial? Because a lot of them are superficial. They're very surface level. They don't go into depth, okay? a lot of the narcissistic relationships and a lot of toxic people, they don't have a true connection with people. And you'll see a lot of the superficial side of it. Okay. And what I mean by that is that, in my experience with my ex and her friends, it was all about just going to expensive restaurants, going to expensive hotels, locations, taking pictures, and that's how far the relationship went. Same thing with her family. There was no depth. It was more like, hi, how you doing? How was your day? And then that was it. And the next thing you know, she was talking bad about them. And pay attention to how they treat people as well. They'll come off as like the great pretender on the outside world, no doubt. They'll make it seem like they care about people so much. They'll post things on social media where it kind of validates that. But knowing that person, it's like things don't match up. That's not how truly they see people, talk about people, because a lot of the times they're probably complaining most of the time about other people to you. And if it's like more like a negative kind of like vibe that you're getting when they're talking to you about other people, yeah, that says a lot. And also too, this one's a big one. Pay attention to how they react in funerals, especially with their family members, and one of the things that I experienced was funerals with her. She had a couple of family members that had passed away, and I would actually, try to comfort her, and she was just like nonchalant about it. And I said, is everything all right? Like what's going on? Like, were you guys close? And she was like, no. And it's always like that with every family member. It's like, no, we were never close. They talked bad about me, about everyone. And it was the same story over and over. So like I said, pay attention to the patterns, because it's not one time, it's not two times or three or four. It's like, it's a lot of repetitions of the same behavior and patterns. And so I knew the funeral part wasn't normal. So I had to throw that in there too, because if you've been around them long enough, you'll start seeing that lack of empathy, compassion, sympathy. So these are the 5 biggest red flags in a toxic relationship. For those who actually have more red flags to introduce in the comment section below, feel free. And also, you guys take care out there. Happy New Year's. And also, I do one-on-one coaching. The link is going to be in the description box below. So thank you again, and Happy New Year's.